right there just don't even care.
Take yourself out.
Action.
Hey, everybody.
What do you say, folks? Hope everybody having a fine Sunday evening.
Oh, I've been having me a fine laugh reading Mr. Mike Conley's chats in here.
Yes, sir. Go back up to them things. I mean,
I want you to know, though, Mr. Mike, I was not privy to let me quote this so I don't mess up, to the He-Man Book of Rules for Gunny and Sissy's Sunday live chats. Thanks for letting me know that, though.
I told her the women can't know what the rule book is in
Yeah.
the He-Man. Woman haters or gun, whatever we got going
What are
on
you
there.
talking about?
The little rascals. Everybody
Oh,
should know that.
no. Good grief.
Yeah. That's where he's talking. I started some of his comments, but I have to go back
Yeah.
and look at them. But other than that, yes, thank you, Mr. Mike.
Yeah. 2 thumbs up.
Let me find these things real quick.
He had some doozies in there.
Oh, there's one of them. Oh, it all started with, is Jack and Danae?
Okay. No, I haven't seen him come back yet.
Danae said she called first in French, or I'm going to assume it was Danae. I doubt Jack's talking French. But anyway, Mr. Mike Conley saying there, he thought she was cussing him out there in some kind of French word. And
But he documented where it is.
oh, that's part of hair and makeup. I forgot about that. Yes, sir. I was in hair and makeup for a while.
Don't he look so pretty, Mr. Mike?
Where's that rules he stated? I already pop it up there. Ain't no time. But anyway, we got a good laugh out of your carrying on, Mr. Mike.
Oh, we did. We sure did.
But
Paul's talking French too.
oh Lord, he's probably talking Cajun French over there, Louisiana. But now I did go back and fact check her language just to make sure if that'll make you feel better too, Mr. Mike. But undoubtedly, in the French language, I'm just gonna say it's premier. It's probably another way of saying it, but that's the way it looks like to me. But
I doubt that's how you say it.
undoubtedly, the ladies are supposed to say it one way, and the men are supposed to say it in a more masculine way of premier. According to the rules.
Please don't start doing that.
I'm not. But on that note, there's fun facts for today,
Yeah.
brought to you by us here.
He said they still ain't here.
Jack and Danae.
Yeah.
That's right, and she called first too. But
Yeah.
like I say, hope everybody. What else we did?
Not much.
Oh, we didn't. Mr. Russell Cookman in here before I forget.
No, Russell Amen. No, Todd, believe it or not, we have actually made it an entire week without having to go to Walmart.
No, didn't go to Walmart this week.
Thank the Lord.
But we'll be going back, and they'll know I'm there too. You can bet your hands on that.
I dread the day we go back.
We'll be back, people. Don't y'all worry.
Okay. Well, we got special guests waiting tonight. You want to get in on the prayer list real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Or what,
We
did you have something else
No,
in your notes?
Well, I got wrote down to remind Mr. Russell Cookman to see if he got my email. If I smashed the right button and it got to it.
Mm.
And I was just going to talk for a second about how we talked to Dirt Rooster for a few minutes. The last couple, well, yesterday, whenever it was.
Because that was pretty fun too.
And Dirt Rooster called. He said, "Hey, y'all, look, there's a chance I'm got to go look at a job over in this area, but how close is it to y'all?" So we told him, he said, "Look, it's about an hour and a half from us." And he said, "Well, it says it's the same for me. So if I get the job, uh,
Tom and Melissa, I'm gonna tell y'all like I tell Danae. Please don't encourage this behavior.
where are we going?"
I'm begging you. Please don't encourage this behavior.
"Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely."
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that one came from Todd. I mean Tom, not Todd. There's way too many similar names in these chats.
Next time we'll go, I'll surely take y'all along with us. We'll go for an adventure through that bad boy.
Carl said, you know, Walmart has the best police force in the county.
Well, yes, or that they probably do. But,
So what's your dirt rooster story?
well, we was talking about taking pictures of flies after all that because we was talking about potentially going to look, or he was going to go look at that job and
Mhm.
see how that went, blah blah blah. Well, I told him about me taking a picture of the fly on the goldenrod, so he had a fly picture story. So we carried on about that for a few minutes. Then we got into boundaries on fence lines and turned into a pretty good conversation. That man knows what I'm talking about. If you're watching, you know what I'm talking about. But let's get into the prayer list and have our fine guest mosey on in here.
Oh, no, I'm excited.
Me too.
Okay. We got Mr. Mark, Ed and his family, but mainly him, his wife, and his father-in-law. The Dirt Roosters got Mr. Pat, Miss Deb, Grammy Lisa's son and two granddaughters, Bob Walker and his family, Tom's wife and his mother-in-law, Mr. Donnie, Mike Tangley and his family, DC's parents, David Hoskins' granddaughter Emma, baby Luca, and the family that lost their little one. Deanna Wheeler and her son Reed, Rachel Wilson, her sister Amanda, and her niece Riley. Philip's mama, his friend BJ and his wife, the Jennifer Brown family, Bobby's Bees and his family, Minnesota Mike and his brother Dave, Aaron Frederick, Mr. Larry and Miss Sherry Gandy, and Mr. Larry's mama, Keith Larimore, Hillbilly Earl. We got your text, Mr. Mark. I'll put her on at the end right here. Hillbilly Earl, the Paris family, Sandy at Icy Mountain Honey, her young family member, Bruce with his bees granddaughter Unsong, Steve Amos's brother and mother-in-law, Spanky, Israel and all those affected by the wars, all of the storm victims, Jeg's Farm's wife, Sean Valtersa's wife, Mr. Ron, PJ Hanley, Stafford Mike, Shabu, Ricky Rourke, 29 Homestead, mine and Tim's family, Grammy Lisa's friend Lime, Catherine's son and his family, Sarah and her family, the Leonard family, Mr. Randy, the Tar Heel, Mr. Randy, his mother-in-law, Cece's Texas Garden, Earl's mama, Miss Vivian, Janae Wood, Miss Leona, Terry Chapman and his family, Kenneth and Chris Wilkinson, Ephraim Kalunga, Terry Bertaland, DC Spring Garrison, the Williams family, Mr. Randy, the Tar Heel Mr. Randy, Brother Eddie Brunson, Miss Janet, Redfish's wife, and then Kimberly's, I think she said her daughter-in-law, Amanda, and her family, all of our government officials, and then what was Mr. Marks? His sister?
What? His wife.
What was her name? Kristen?
Yes. We got to Mr. Mark Miller.
His wife, Miss Crystal.
So she's having surgery on her neck and may have to work on some deals. So, y'all pray for everybody on the list. Ned and Mr. Mark's wife there. Y'all bear with us 1 second. Real quick, wanted to mention that heard Ricky say on his live last Thursday, I believe it was. We wasn't able to catch it. Thursday was our anniversary, and the Lord blessed us with another year of marriage on that year. We're grateful for that. But we went back the next morning and watched Ricky's live, and him saying, "Y'all, through the beekeeping community now, it was nothing at all that Gunline did. It was everybody in here, but saying almost $3,000 has been raised to help folks in the beekeeping community or wherever it needs to go for it. Ricky's going to make sure it goes to a good place, is what I'm saying. But that was awesome. Him saying almost $3,000. So thumbs up, y'all. Everybody. That's awesome. The prayers, and like I say, the donations everybody's making, that's not including people saying that come spring, they're going to be donating nukes and
equipment and everything.
So
it just keeps going and going and going.
It does. And that's awesome. Yeah. So
Everybody.
Without further ado, I just want to make sure we did not forget that.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the next week or so, I know Blaine's money's supposed to be here around the 21st and all that. So
yeah, hopefully in the next week we'll have it all together and can send it.
Have a full tally and like she said, get that money right on up there to Ricky and those families that need it. But like I said, without further ado, we're gonna get Mr. and Mrs. Greg Burns in here. We're gonna chew the fat for a little bit.
I only got another lady in the house.
Oh yeah, she's excited. There's a woman here.
I'm so excited.
What do you say, y'all?
Good evening, folks. Good to see you in here.
Yes, sir. Thanks y'all for dropping by and
Absolutely.
chit chat or derail one of the two. So y'all hold on.
One thing's for sure, everyone's going to get what they paid for tonight to come to the show. So there's that, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. But well,
my go buttons.
Like I said, I think my first question's on Mr. Mike. This is why I was late because we was backstage and carrying on for just a second. But I was telling them is we get to see you guys each Wednesday. Y'all do y'all stream team and outside the videos and all that we all put out individually, but we really don't get to hear too much about Greg Burns and especially Mrs. Burns there and how it kind of all started, come together, and the way y'all allow the Lord to lead y'all's life, and just kind of see if we can pick through that a little bit.
Well, want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come on here and share our testimony and kind of share our life's journey. And but I just want to thank you guys for what you do. You know, having a prayer request, standing up for the Lord, doing what's right is a big deal. And a lot of folks are ashamed. A lot of folks don't feel like they are in a place where they're comfortable bringing in their faith and their belief into all the things that they do. So I appreciate channels and chats like what you guys do, where you're not ashamed, you're bold, you're strong, you have no problem standing up for the Lord, standing up for what's right, and making sure that we give God all the glory and all the praise for all the things. And so I just want to let you guys know how much we appreciate you guys for doing that.
Thank you much.
We appreciate that.
We can go on and on that we don't really get the opportunity. We've kind of gone through so many different kind of adaptations and changes of the podcast and the YouTube channel and the things that we try to put out and try to share with. But rarely do we really have the opportunity to kind of tell, you know, our story when we're out speaking at conferences or events like that. Usually, that's where it comes out, and that's where I take every opportunity I can to post up scripture, to make sure that we're honoring where we came from, why we're here, and for me, that's extremely rewarding. I've got a couple. You know, as we were coming in here tonight to meet with you guys, you know, there's a couple things that I feel like the Lord's put on my heart. I've kind of got those scribbled out, and I think it'll be a lot of fun just to see where the night goes, where the conversation goes, and where we feel led to kind of bring all these things kind of into conversation. I want to thank everyone on your channel for all the support that they have for you guys. That's a big deal, and there's a tremendous surge of Christian beekeepers who are willing to stand up and to be a part of that and to share in that fellowship. And that is such a big deal. I don't think anyone here needs me to tell them that we are living in some very dark days. And, you know, we're young, you know, we're only 40. Well, I'm a little younger than you.
Stop.
Oh, that's dangerous word.
I'm just a little younger, just by a couple months. But we're in our early 40s, you know. And I you know, I guess I just want to talk about this for a minute before we go down the road there. But you know, I grew up, you know, I was born in 82, and I was born and raised into an old country church where my grandpa was the pastor. So I was raised from the womb on the knee in the pew, eventually up on the platform, you know, playing along with the musicians. But I was raised a certain way that is not real common anymore. And I'm so thankful for that upbringing. But I can remember Grandpa fire and brimstone from the pulpit. The old timers had a certain way of just laying things out unapologetically, with no shame, and they would lay it out, and you really left there thinking, okay, what's going on? I often think, man, what would Grandpa be doing right now if he was behind the pulpit? We are living in some dark days, folks, and it is the darkest that we have ever seen in our 42 years. But you know, there's so much to that. But I don't know, what do you guys get a sense or a feeling like that in your communities too, that we're living in some pretty dark days?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. And your granddaddy would most definitely be in the lion's den in this day and age for standing behind the pulpit and preaching and standing on the word of God versus trying to bend things to, we'll say, to conform to our lifestyles, if you will.
I can imagine what your grandpa would say, because he's got to be right there with that generation of my grandma. And I know what she tells me on a daily basis.
Right.
And she wasn't even a preacher. So yeah, we see it here for sure too.
Unfortunately, we see it the same way. We come up in a small community here, and everybody knows everybody, and all the churches on each corner, if you will, because down here, like they said, there's a church on just about every corner. But whether it's Methodist, Baptist, so on down the line, everybody knows everybody. They know the preachers, but unfortunately, like you say, it's not the men standing behind the pulpit preaching fire and brimstone. You know, there's just a,
Kids are just taught understanding and inclusion these days. They're not taught right from wrong anymore.
Jesus is love, but yet Christ is correction as well.
Right.
And that's just what we see a lot of things. We ended up having to come back to our home church. We had moved out of the community for a few years, and we looked for another little old church and looked, and we bounced around, and it was the same thing. You know, you'd hear the dig a little deeper in your pockets whenever the plate come around, and love the Lord and you're going to heaven. Well, I'm not one of those individuals. Like I tell the preacher all the time, I got to be broken down. I'm a broken vessel.
Right.
So continuously break me down. That way I can at least try to rebuild myself in a better way.
Yeah.
I'm done
That's
preaching.
what I'm saying
Yes.
now.
I'm done.
Yeah, it seems like the days of preaching from the pulpit, repentance, deliverance, and salvation are rare form anymore. And I get it. The thing about it is it feels as though humankind and man has changed, but God hasn't. He's the same yesterday as he is today, as he will be tomorrow, and there will be accountability for that. And so I think as everything evolves and develops, we see that in all the things. And so I guess in the last couple years specifically, that's just been pressed on my heart that I feel like we're living in those days that the old timers warned about, that they preached about, that they all set us up to be right here, right now, to be the ones in the middle of this. And so it's because, and the reason I say all that is what it seems, our beekeeping community, of course, we all feel that it's special. But I do feel like God's moving in all of these communities. And if we were privy to all of the woodworking or sawmilling or homesteading, all these different movements, I bet there are still groups of folks that are springing up like this, that they're sharing their faith, they're sharing the Lord with each other. I don't think it's just us in this little beekeeping niche, and I think that it's for good reason. I think that the Christian movement, I think, is starting to surge, because even the lukewarm Christian can't look around our environment and pretend everything's fine. You can't do that anymore. I don't see how you can look around everything, the social scene, the political scene, everything. We could go on and on and on and on all night long, but especially when we get into 2019 and after, I don't know that anybody, if the trouble is not everybody has eyes to see all the time, but I think those scales are starting to fall off and people are starting to see the Lord's tugging on people's hearts. They're able to now be bold and stand up for what's right, and to not only that, but to be the leaders of their household like they're called to be, bring their family into church. And we're not perfect. Just because I grew up in an old country church doesn't mean that we have been living some pristine Christian life ever since. We've been on our own trek through the wilderness and we are where we're at right now. And that's an important thing, I think, for everyone to think about. No matter what your journey is in life, God is still trying to call. He's still trying to tug on your heart. Are you going to have ears to hear? Are you going to have an open heart to follow through? And are you going to stand and not worry about what folks say, what folks do? It's an important time we're living in, for sure.
Absolutely. I think the best we can do is just hope and pray that it's really happening and more and more people are really standing up and coming together in Jesus' name. Like you're saying, a surge would be an incredible thing to get to witness.
No, Christ calling in his fold, calling his sheep in. And some of us, we listened to that call early on, and some of us, it may have taken us a little bit longer before we listened to that call, but
Thank God for the ones that kept praying for you till you listened.
Right.
ain't that true?
All
Yes.
the grannies, you got it. Yeah, no doubt. So I want to just that's been on my heart, and I feel like if that's something pressed on me, someone else is also thinking about that. There's probably someone going to listen to this who's struggling. They're on the fence. They know they should have a closer walk, but for whatever reason, they make whatever excuse that it is to be a little soft with that, or not commit, or not to get into the devotions. And so I wanted to first and foremost just kind of bring that into the conversation a little bit. I will have to say, not just because Tim, you and I have got thumpers right next to us, but I want to say this first and foremost: behind every good man's an even better woman, and I know for a fact that we would not be where we're at with our family, with our faith, with our business, if I wasn't sitting next to a Proverbs 31 woman. And I'm pretty sure you'd probably say the same thing.
Oh Lord, yes sir, absolutely. I'd be out carrying on, acting a fool, the whole everything. I mean, I'm not gonna say sugarcoat it,
Yeah.
but I mean that's been the blessing of it though. Idle me on down. Here's what needs to be done. The encouragement, and in those times you need somebody, that's most definitely the one you can count on is a good woman, and it's a blessing to have one. And most definitely, we talk about things in this day and time for a man to find a good woman that's going to be a woman, carry the traditions of what the Bible says to do, and to love her family. I don't know, just it's a rare, rare thing nowadays, and it's a sad for the next generations coming up, because if it's this bad now, just imagine what it's going to be for the young bucks running around, and the ladies as well. Say it on that end too. It's just kind of like what Paul with Hell Hive saying. We have the expectations of a fallen world to get better, if you will, and when reality we know it isn't. But
Right.
That's where that constant pursuit of the Lord carries us through without that fear that a lot of people carry nowadays.
Yep.
I said he chose well. It's like he knew or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
That's great.
Now, did you make him chase you around quite a bit before you said, all right? Or how'd that work out?
Maybe a little.
You tell that story. From this is
Well, we
literally
were high school sweethearts, so I mean,
Oh,
24 years married and 25 or 26 knowing each other. Well, actually, he knew me before I knew him.
tell him how you wrote me into this whole thing to start with.
Oh yeah, well, I let him copy my homework, and finally in one class, I was like, "If you're going to copy my homework, you have to take me out." He was like, "Oh, okay."
yeah.
And started that way. I asked for it.
That
Here
is
I am.
awesome.
I'm this, I'm as I've gotten older, the
Strong silent type that didn't do his homework.
the grandpa preacher type, as I matured, it just showed up. But as a youngster in high school, I was the introvert, the quiet guy, the loner, no friends. I'd rather be by myself than be a part of what was going on for the most part. And so here I walk into English class, and I've been copying this pretty girl's homework for the entire year in more than one class. And I sit down there, and I can remember exactly the seat I was sitting in and looking over, and just when you look back on it now, you can say the Lord was tugging on your heart, right? As a young adolescent male, that might have felt a little different, but there was something different about this girl, and I just knew it. I couldn't stop looking at her. I was absolutely drawn and attracted to her. But I was so shy, so introverted. And so even going back then, even the Lord used that. And she says, you've been copying my homework for this long. You owe me. You need to take me out. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did she really say that? I'm thinking, did I hear that right? And so I was like, what are you doing Friday? I thought, if I've got this chance, buddy, we're going to snap it up. We're not going to let this go another week and then see if, and so,
All downhill from there.
boy, I don't know that we have enough time in this part one series to go down that entire road, but that's long story short is high school sweethearts, and started building a life together right away, and started growing a family. And at the time we were we went to school, and you guys wouldn't know, but Gahanna here locally, or not too far from here, an hour or so away. We grew up in a kind of a suburban type of an area, and we were just hashing out in the trenches, living. We got an apartment together and all these things, and started to grow the family, and kind of one thing led to another, and we were living the typical. And I hope I don't. I should probably say this before we even get started. The thoughts, views, and expressions of Greg and Susan Burns do not necessarily reflect those of Tim and Hannah at Gunline Bees. And for anybody with tender toes, I'm just going to give you the tender toe warning. Go ahead and lace up those steel toe boots, because if you feel like I'm stepping on your toes, maybe it's not me. Maybe the Lord's tugging on your heart. But we were living the literal American scheme, is what I call it. It wasn't the American dream. It was the American scheme, where we were maxing out credit cards, living beyond our means, financially irresponsible. That's what we knew to do. That's the dream that we thought we were chasing.
3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 cars.
2 new cars, and a garage. We couldn't afford any of it. And it put us into a situation where I've been self-employed my entire adult life. And so it ended up putting me in a situation where we were burning the candles at both ends and the wax in between. And as we started raising our kids, Susie had a backyard garden, and was always, she is only, she would be perfect. She's a pioneer woman. She's got that spirit, the canning and the gardening and the frugality and the making something from nothing all the time. Can go into a pantry and make a gourmet meal with looks like nothing. That's what God has given her. And it got to a point where, as we're raising the family up, and I'm working hard, self-employed, which is a tough road to go to begin with. When you're young and you're raising a family and you're trying to build a business, you don't have the luxury to say no. So you're taking every opportunity, and long story short, ends up kind of burning you out. I was on a trip back out of state, and it was actually this exact time of year. This is the time of year here in the kind of the Midwest where the sun is in the sky can absolutely be blinding in the morning, and then in the early evenings. And long story short, I got into an accident that I should not have walked away from. And I'm heading down the interstate, and all I can remember is Beethoven and the truck lifting off the ground and seeing bright white, knowing the truck just went airborne, and feeling that I just landed on something else. And then I can remember coming to a dead still. And I can remember in that moment, my life literally flashing in front of my eyes. I'm thinking about all my kids. I'm thinking about my wife. Have I raised them up? Are they going to be able to pay the bills? Have I done all the things that I needed to do as a husband, as a father? Are they going to be okay without me? In that moment, what's more frightening than feeling like you were just in an accident is it being so still, so white, not hearing anything, not seeing anything, thinking you just got into an accident on an interstate and you're bracing for impact. There's miles of traffic going 75 miles an hour behind you. You feel like, okay, nothing's happened. You're waiting. You're feeling like you're anticipating a pile up. And then when nothing happens and it's quiet and it's still, you feel like, have I just crossed over? Was that it? Am I dead? You have those thoughts, and we're talking nanoseconds. All this happens in just seconds, and it felt like lifetimes of all these thoughts, all these things. It's so hard to explain. How we understand time as a man is we have no real conception of what time really is. And next thing I know, here's a guy who spoke not a word of English is cutting me out of the side curtain airbags and dragging me out of the truck. And I'm starting to come to, and I get out of the truck, and I'm outside of the truck, and I'm standing on my own 2 feet. The car that I landed on top of, that guy is standing out. And we look back, and for miles, as far as traffic on both sides of the road on the interstate stopped, miles and miles and miles. And I look over at him, he looks over at me. Man, what in the world? Are you okay? Are you okay? Such weird little things that I'll never probably fully understand. But I walked away from that clean as a whistle. I had a bruise on my left thumbnail. I'm talking to this guy. Are you okay? Is everything all right? Weirdly enough, only damage he had was the same bruise on his left thumbnail. Vehicles both absolutely demolished. We're standing. We're not hurt. It was one of those things where sometimes it's a hard concept, and I don't really have the words to really explain to this, but for me, I felt like it was a wake-up call. I don't want to say it was God grabbing me by the neck and saying, "Wake up, buddy," but it was certainly a wake-up call. From that moment on, life is extra. Every single day is an enormous blessing. I'm in overtime. This is bonus. And because of that, I realize, what am I doing with every day, every hour, every minute? Because it matters. What am I doing with my life? And we decided that it was time for us to pack it up, get out of that suburban HOA, find a piece of land, get back to the roots, learn all these things right alongside the kids, get out to a homestead, start from scratch, and figure this all out together. It has been the most rewarding thing that we have ever done, not just for ourselves, but we are literally training a child up in the way that they should go so that when they're old, they won't depart from it. We needed that physical reset in every sense of the word. And that was kind of one of those huge moments for us that set us down this path of beekeeping.
The Lord has a way.
Awesome story.
Well, absolutely awesome story, especially y'all walking away from it with, just literally a bruised thumb and a scratch or two kind of thing. But like you're saying, the Lord has a way of getting our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, yes, sir, I'm listening. As I should have been, but you got my
He
attention,
don't
man.
give you warnings before he really grabs you by the neck of your neck and gets your attention.
I mean, it's just like a parent or a daddy lining up one of his youngins. I can't speak as a daddy, but I'd imagine I'd say, after look a time or two, me telling you not to do that, well, I'm going to let you do it. That way you can learn one good time, and we can start over, and you can figure out the process of what I'm trying to explain to you, kind of thing. But it humbles you and it scares you at the same time whenever he gives you those moments. That's for sure. What do I need to do now? All right, I'm listening.
Yep.
So, in that, everybody has a start in beekeeping. And in that start, we have them years of, I'll just say, dirty faces and busted knuckles, if you will. When did y'all start getting on the track of, okay, let's maybe try to make something out of this, and whether it's just sell a little bit of honey or like y'all got now, y'all are just doing business, selling different products, and on top of selling bees and packages on down the line. When did y'all kind of start getting into that idea of, well, let's see what we do with this?
I would imagine it came after y'all decided to do the homestead, right?
Yeah, and the busted knuckles thing, that seems like it never quite goes away. And the dirty faces, it's just different phases that I got to give credit to Susie here, because every good idea that we have ever had, 100% has been hers, and I've just been the knucklehead to say, oh, well, let's figure this thing out. Do you remember what it was like when we first We got out.
There's never a time where you're not thinking of making something into a business because we have 7 children. So there's mouths to feed always. So if it was
Mhm.
raising pigs, it was we need this many for us, and how many do we need to sell to pay for that? Or we're going to plant an orchard. So how many are we going to buy and sell to pay for this? Or, it was always business minded, and I come from entrepreneurs, so I just think it comes naturally, and so I think it was always just instinctually there to make it a business.
Okay.
It comes from a frugality part. We're literally, and I think a lot of us, if we're honest, if you look back at your family heritage, a lot of us, myself included, are only 2 generations of war from 2 generations away, literally from barefoot dirt floor
Yeah.
West Virginians. A lot of us, that's our roots. When it comes down to, a lot of us came historically from nothing, and so being frugal is a part of our DNA. Then some of us, when you start to have access to things and opportunities, we sometimes go wild and get out of control with that. But inside of us is always that frugality, that always we're always trying to move things forward. And that's where, as we went off to the homestead, we were trying to figure out, how do we get this other business of ours that we started, and we were blessed that God gave us those opportunities. How can we get dad off the road so dad can be home more with the kids, and dad's not out there risking life and limb on the road or on a plane coast to coast and just running himself stretched so thin just to earn an income without investing in the family. And when we got to the homestead, we thought, well, we want to be able to raise our own meat. We want to raise our own garden. We want to do all these things, take responsibility for our lives. We want to be in charge of the nutrition that we're feeding our kids, the milk, the meat, the whole 9 yards. And so we started thinking, well, how do we afford this? It's a tight, you guys, everybody knows, I'm not speaking out of turn, where, we still are on a bootstrap budget. That's just the way that it is. And when we started getting into the homestead thing, we wanted to raise chickens. And so we're trying to figure, okay, how much do chickens cost? How many do we need for how many eggs that we need? Can we raise a dozen more and sell, a few dozen eggs a week to help offset the cost? Chickens were the gateway to everything else. Chickens led to the turkeys, and then rabbits, and what I'm trying to think what the progression was there. But
Pigs.
we were raising pigs in the woods, and eventually we had dairy cows and nursery stock and herbs and things. We would literally throw everything against the wall to see well, that's weird.
What did you do?
I don't know. Peter's got the mind of a king.
I'll take some blame Jasper.
It
That was weird.
motion.
How do we get back to that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not going to track
Let's
you.
go this
There
way.
you
There
go.
we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
It
Well,
likes you better.
Yeah.
Y'all fit right in.
Welcome, y'all.
Yeah, first timers here. Thanks for that. You guys know what it's like to throw everything against the wall to kind of see what sticks.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we were doing. And Susie, we're driving, past the homestead one day, and she says, "You know what we need?" And fellas, how many times?
Why do you always blame it on me?
Look, we love our wives. We give them all the credit that they deserve. When your wives say, "You know what we need," typically it's the husband saying, "You know what we need," and it's these things, and you look over and she's just thinking, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard you say today," right? And it before it even comes out of your mouth. You're thinking, "This is not going to land well, but let's give her a shot here." So when our wives say that, and our wives have a track record and a history of being on point every single time, when the wife says, "You know what we need?" First thing you're thinking is, "Oh my gosh, what am I building now? What is this at?" And I'm thinking, whatever, I will say yes, whatever that it is, as long as it's not goats. No, just no goats. No goats. No more goats. Right? And so she says, "We need bees." And
Well, let's be fair, and it was honey. It was, I need a bucket of honey a year. I needed 1 5-gallon bucket of honey a year.
At the time, what were you using honey for?
Everything. Everything. I would make, the garlic honey and ginger honey and granola and
The elderberry syrup, and the
elderberry
bread,
syrup,
and
and you have a lot of kids, so it's peanut butter and honey and
Hey, I grew up on peanut butter and honey sandwiches.
oh, I've got that's my. I was
That's
on
his
this.
go-to
She put me
summer
on this
lunch.
keto thing for a little while, right? And she wants to keep me around and keep me healthy, and I can appreciate that. The only trouble with that is a peanut butter and honey sandwich really doesn't fit into that equation a whole lot. So I'll be, you guys can keep me in your prayers. I have completely backslid, fell off the wagon when it comes to keto. I'm back to my peanut butter and honey sandwiches. I do feel a lot better because of it. But I think what Susie, it was heading in that direction because we had some challenges with our oldest son. And as we had more and more kids, we were trying to make sure that we are providing the best possible nutrition that we can. And really what that meant was just cutting out as much preserved products and convenience products as possible. So for sweeteners, and so we were, food is thy medicine. We were looking towards food, not just for nutrition, but for medicine too. And that's where honey really came into I think the picture. And at the time, she found a supplier of buying, 5 gallons of, 5 gallon buckets of honey for, and she was using that up.
Yeah.
And she says, why are we buying this? We could like
Probably
anybody
do that ourselves.
can't we just, and it's the most expensive 5-gallon bucket of honey we ever produced, but however we did, but
And what a feeling that had to be for your first bucket like that.
oh yeah, absolutely. I can remember that feeling. I still remember that first time of opening the valve in this little manual extractor that we had, and it's all coming out, and it's just like, oh my Lord,
Liquid gold.
and a lot of that, man, truth be told, a lot of that was not necessarily a success story. It was, and I don't want to get down that rabbit hole because that's another 3-hour conversation. But we came into homesteading and agriculture and farming under a extremely holistic organic approach. So as you can imagine, when it came to bees, a lot of what we were doing was completely hands off, and that ended up with a certain relationship to where the bees were dying or dead, and we're harvesting honey off of dead outs. And even that is a testimony in and of itself, where even in those times where you think it is just worst case scenario, there was still provision. There was still exactly what we needed was actually still right there. So we got a question there from old Ian, looks like. Greg and Susan, who did you purchase your homestead property off of? That's a great story too. We bought a first little piece of ground. It was 5 acres, and early on, we'd run some 4-wheelers there, maybe try to do some deer hunting. Deer hunting on 5 acres, that's a tough way to go because you talk about fence lines and right of ways and neighbor. I mean, that's rough, And God, He put it on our heart that if we had that 5 acres behind there, if we had 10 acres, for some reason it was pressed on me so hard. 10 acres. If
we had 10 acres, we can keep.
If we had 10 acres, there would be enough land here to spread out to be able to do enough of these things to really kind of go down that road. And we
10 acres with 9 people.
What we know now versus but that was the fire that we had deep down inside to get moving. We ended up trading some of the things that we had for fun, like a 4-wheeler, traded that for an old 1965 John Deere 3020 that needed a bunch of work. And we got that rascal snorting and ripping, and we started logging the woods there and started having the wood cut. And we were actually, the plan and the goal was to build a barn where the understory, we could move everything out of the house in town, move it into the bottom, live in the upper part, sell the house, and then start building the homestead. And
then
you should tell that story because that's an extremely important part, and about what happened there as we're logging and we're trying to figure all these things out, and we're just running on ambition and desire. And tell them the rest of that story on how we got
what part of it.
The part where we're going all in to log and to cut wood to build this barn. And I'll say this: when you have ears to hear and your heart is softened enough, even if you don't know all the answers in the direction, there's a certain thing with obedience. When you just take those steps out and you say, okay, we're going to do it. We don't have all the answers. We have no idea how we're going to do any of this, but we're going to go ahead and head in that direction. Sometimes to say that the Lord works in mysterious ways is a grave understatement. As we were working towards building a barn, what happened? Do you remember what happened next?
You have to tell me which part you want to tell,
So
because there's long stories here.
There's the
There's a lot of history.
So we're out, in the cold parts of the month is deer season. The first Monday after Thanksgiving is deer season here for the first gun season. And
Yep.
Susie and the kids drove past our property just a couple driveways down. And it's, we live on a road at the time where it was barely a gravel road. And eventually we really became high on the hog, and it's chipped and sealed now, which is really nice. But they used to just be an old gravel road. It's cut into we're in the foothills of the Appalachians here. So we've got at the very top of the hills here, we're probably 1,150 feet. And then down in the bottom of the ravines, we get down to like 700, 690, 680. So we've got 400 and 500 feet of elevation in very short spans.
You go from 10 pounds of pressure to 15 real quick.
And it's so we're living hillsides here.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
no, we'll get to
Any canner would know what I'm saying.
It's a long story. No,
yeah.
we're on
Long
large acres now.
Yeah.
But that's where we were heading and getting going. And so with this old windy road that you really have no business being on unless you have business being on it.
Yeah.
So we had no business really being further than where our property was at per se.
Yeah.
And Susie decided it was on her heart just to keep driving.
A couple kids on the 4-wheeler, right?
Yeah. Tell them the rest of that story.
Yeah, I took a couple kids on the 4-wheeler, and was I pregnant? I can't.
More
place.
than likely,
I was probably pregnant.
If you have to ask if you were pregnant, the question is yes, because you've been pregnant for 20 years. It seems like.
And I took a couple kids, and I saw this for sale sign at the end of a driveway, and this driveway was steep. So I went up with the kids, and I couldn't see in the windows, but I tried to look into the windows, and I was like, oh, this is decent. And so the Lord put it on my heart just to pray, put my hands on this house and lay hands on the house and pray for it. And if it was to be ours, he'd make a way. But I had no expectation whatsoever. I had no clue that this was a 2-bedroom. I mean, we had no clue that this was going to be like, a
fixer-upper to say the least.
Yeah, a lot. So, yeah, it was a month and a half later that we closed on that house.
It's unbelievable. We've been self-employed. Anyone who knows, if you're self-employed and you're trying to go to a bank for a loan, you have to have an incredible amount of assets.
Yeah.
30, sometimes 50% down, especially then.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where you knew it was way outside of there was no way in the world. There was no way literally in this world that we could make that happen.
Oh, I was pregnant, but it was for the twins. So we were on a deadline.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Her and the kids, they visit this house.
Yeah.
And this house, it's a manufactured home, 1999, and that was left. It went to a sheriff's sale. It was left vacant. It was
left a lot to be desired.
It was in rough shape on the inside. Just you can imagine a house with no HVAC that's been left there for 2 years or so more. It's a problem. But she had that tug on her heart, and she obeyed, and she went and did that. And all of a sudden, everything changed. I just felt like, okay, well, I'm going to go in. I'm going to sit down with the bank. I'm going to lay it all out, and we're just going to trust that this is the direction that we should go. And it was as smooth and as easy as you could possibly imagine anything you would ever want to go. And so what happened is we were obedient and say, we're going to do this. We're going to put this flag in the ground. We're going to set the roots down. At the time, we thought the direction was we're going to log out these woods. We're going to build this thing from scratch. We're going to do all these different things. And there was this other plan that was already in place well ahead of us. But all we had to do was obey and follow through. And that's where working together as a team, husband and wife, we were talking about this morning at church. You know, we're blessed with an opportunity where me and several of my sons and sometimes daughters are able to be a part of the praise team, sing and be a part of that. And this morning we were just talking about that. If we're all not individually, literally in tune, like a guitar or a banjo or anything else out, when you get up there together and you start to play, it doesn't matter what you do. That one thing is off. There's dissonance. You can hear it, and that thing sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And it can be distracting, and it can take away. The same things go for husbands and wife. If we're not on the same page, if we are not tuned up with a heart and an eye for God, things they have a way of there's dissonance. Things are not in harmony. But when we heeded that call just to go out there and plant the flag, just make those moves, go forward. That's what I did on my half. She goes out and lays hands on this dilapidated house. And why that is so beautiful is because that was the opportunity. Here's a house now, 2 driveways down from this 10 acres that we're trying to plant the flag on, that we spent a few months getting the house ready and fixed up. We got out, we moved. Our other house sold within hours of being on the market. The offer came in for way more than we even asked. So God provided then too. It gave us opportunities on this little piece of ground to start.
Yeah.
And then we did. And so rather than all this time and effort being in building this building and figuring all these things out, it was a God.
Had it been home birthing babies on a dirt floor, so
Well,
it wouldn't have been good.
Yeah. And it's such an incredible thing because literally those twins were birthed at home here on the homestead, here at this place. And it's just, it's a beautiful thing. And there's so many aspects of that are so incredible, but there is something to be said about just being obedient, heeding that call, taking those steps of faith, even when you're not comfortable, especially when you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
And things happen.
That's a really awesome story.
That is.
That's a really, really awesome story.
Well, like I say, the Lord just put that there. Your woman took charge on that end, listening to the Lord and seeing something and going, well, if he wants me to do it, then we're going to pray over it and let him carry on from there with it. And now I think the only place that we would have a hiccup on any kind of homesteading, because I tried to run this by mine here, that nothing could go to slaughter, nor could we slaughter, because everything would become a pet.
Yeah.
You gotta have a big enough place you can keep me away from the ones we're supposed to eat. That's my only condition. Because I can't. Like I couldn't. I don't think.
I've got a good buddy we grew up with, Will Lance, we talk about here, that's got the bees down the road. And the man's got 80 beautiful acres, just open pasture, got his own cows out there. And I told her, I said, look, I said, we can get a cow and just put it out there at Lance's property. And there we go.
That's fine,
She said,
as long as I don't ever have to see it. Because
Right.
if I see it, then I'm going to pet it, and then it's over with.
Right.
That's my biggest thing.
now we could do the gardening and like you're talking about using the honeys for different ailments and things of that such, but we would be we would starve to death on this hill before something went in the pot.
I'm not that bad. Okay, if we were starving, you could do it when I wasn't there.
And then you've got kids doing chicken chores and the turkey jumps on little Lily's head and she goes, when are we going to butcher that thing? And I'm like, oh, well, it's almost Thanksgiving.
Well, hey, look, just let her keep on. Look, if she can handle it, then encourage that, because there ain't no changing me at this point.
It's hard once they become pets. It is different for sure. But our kids have always had to be real good with knowing that those bunnies were not for.
You do have to be careful naming them, unless you name them dinner, supper, Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we did have, like, when we had pigs, pork chop.
And then, but even the ones like Roseanne and Mrs. Wigglesworth, you still, when you know that we're bringing them in, here for a certain reason and a time, it's a little different. But we were coming off the heels of what I feel like is the was a second back to the land movement when we were heading down. It's been a little over 10 years that as we were making all these moves and these things happening, and it's still going strong.
Yeah.
But I say it's looking back, it would actually be fun to start writing all this down, because all these little stories and things that I haven't thought about some of this stuff until someone asked the question. But
I know, I was thinking you were telling me like to talk about when I told you that I was pregnant with the twins, because he was in a deer stand at that point, so he didn't believe me.
Yeah, she are you in a deer stand? Are you tied? Are you tied to the tree? Because she had news that she was going to fall out.
I figured he'd fall out, knowing that I'm here getting an ultrasound, finding out that I'm pregnant with twins, and he's in a deer stand with one of the kids, and all I can hear is our second son going, "Mom, what's baby A and baby B mean? What's baby A and baby B mean?" And I'm like, just be quiet for a second. I just need to think. I need to think how we're going to deal with this.
It is important lesson that pride goeth before a fall, because we knew, obviously, I mean, we knew we were pregnant. Now that sounds weird. I still have a hard time saying that, like including me in the we pregnant part. I mean, you were pregnant. It's a part of a team for sure. But after, when you've got 5 kids already, you're thinking, okay, cool, send it. Lock and load. We're dialed in. Like, we got this, right? But God's got a way of humbling us sometimes. And when you're getting a buy one get one free there, and it was 6 and 7, you're thinking, all right, what? That's a little different. How are we going to? And so here on this little this house, it was actually sold as a 3-bed. It's a 2-bedroom. It was a 2-bedroom house.
5 kids in 1 bedroom, and the twins in our closet.
Oh my goodness, what we've had to do to get out here to be a part of this is I'd do it all over again, 100%. But those are the things, looking back, that are fun. Maybe we should spend some time to write that down. It would be a fun book to write, at least for the kids to have a recollection. But that's how all this got started, because of the homestead. And we were throwing everything against the wall, and we had bees. And bees were the thing, is as you scale up and start to figure out, okay, we were raising 15 or 20 pigs, forest raised. They really they did all the work. They got about 5 pounds of grain, non-GMO grain per hog per day. They were dialed in on food and nutrition, and that was the thing that was moving forward quickly. We had a lot of customers at the time, and we were for what we thought was a big deal then. When we were selling 15 hogs at the time, that was a significant amount of revenue for a homestead.
Yeah.
And we thought, okay, how do we scale this up where we can justify putting more time to be able to earn and have this as a larger part of our income? And when you start to do the math on 10 acres, there was no way in the world that we could scale that up in a way to raise them the way that we wanted to, where it made sense. And all of a sudden, we're looking at all the things, the rabbits and the turkeys and the chickens and the meat birds and the nursery stock and the comfrey cuttings and all of those things. The economy of scale slapped us right in the face very quickly, except for the bees.
Yeah.
The bees were this beautiful blessing that no matter what we did, there was always more and more and more opportunities. That's actually how we got our start. We talk about this a lot, so I don't want it. This is a very long, hard lessons learned conversation, but I'll just say that once again, my wife was right. We were raising a lot of bees. We were up to like 106 colonies here at this homestead, raising them in the side yard, and we could get up to numbers, and then they would all die, and get up to numbers, and they would all die. And she eventually said, "You're great at making splits, and you're great at making queens, but you are terrible at keeping these bees alive in the wintertime. We cannot keep dumping money into bees while you figure out how you're going to keep them alive. This treatment-free thing that you're doing, it is obviously not working. How many years are you going to keep banging your head against the wall before you decide to start treating them and taking care of these like it's any other livestock that was here?" This was the same year where we had gotten a batch of piglets from a highly recommended provider. And we're lined out to go bring these heritage hogs back and raise them in the woods. And then when you get into February and March here in Ohio, it's pneumonia season.
Yeah.
It's up and down temperatures, which actually it's all of winter now in Ohio. But anyways, we had these little piglets here, and we had them a hut, and like we've done it like we had done for a few years before. Everything was great. Weather went sour, But when we went to go pick up these pigs, rather than being, like a 40-pound, 35 to 50-pound wiener pig, these wiener pigs, they were still on red lamps. They were still on mom. And we had traveled like 3 hours to go pick them up. And the guy's telling me they're ready to go. And so now I'm in a situation where, okay, what do I do? Do I pass? Do I go ahead and take them and we see what happens? In hindsight, for the health of the animals, I should have not picked them up at all, but I'm stubborn. And at the time, probably too proud and probably too much ego. And we had already had customers lined up for those pigs. So we loaded them up. We brought them back. Everything was fine for the first couple of days. And then all of a sudden, you guys know what it's like on those those early winter, it's cold, it's dark. You can hear everything for miles. If anyone has ever had pigs and you hear them bark, not like a playful bark, I'm hungry, but that raspy respiratory cough coming on, it is horrible. And it was 1, and then it was 2, and then it was 3. They all started getting pneumonia. This is at the time we were raising all of the animals. This is the mindset that we had, is that God created these animals. If these animals cannot exist on this land without us intervening with antibiotics or probiotics or any other health, then we're going to call them out. That's fine. They're going to be gone. That was where my heart was at, until all of a sudden those little piglets are coughing. And just like that, my entire heart softened and my entire heart changed. And I knew that I was responsible for bringing these animals into this environment. It's a part of animal husbandry and caring for livestock and being stewards of this land. That wasn't a choice. And so we did our very best, and we lost some of them. But it was literally, if anyone has ever lost an animal like this, and I don't want to sensationalize this, or also don't want to downplay it either. But when all of a sudden you feel that conviction and you know you've got to do something, I will never forget this one beautiful little red Tamworth pig on my lap, coughing its last cough, and seeing the lights go out in its eyes and knowing that it was my fault. And that rascal died right on my lap. It was in that moment that I said, you know what? All these things that my wife has been saying, she's right. We got to care for our bees, just like the pigs, just like the cows, like the chickens, everything else. They sometimes need our help. And we decided to step in and start doing something different with the bees. The bees started growing, more bees we could do anything with. We were selling nukes and queens right out of the side yard of the house. That's how we started. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And it led to another miracle story where, just go back just a few years from today, Susie gets a flyer in the mail that there's a land auction for a way big farm just the next ridge over. Now imagine, here we are experiencing this entire life. And you look at a horizon and you see a ridge line. You never know what's on the horizon. You never know what that ground looks like. You never know what the future holds. You just know you see the sun set every single night over those trees. It's beautiful. The sun goes down, but you don't know what is just over that next hillside. You don't know. Well, this land that came up for sale, guess where it was? It was that ridge that we spent all these years looking at and watching the sunset. That's where we were watching and beelining swarms coming from our place. One year we lost it all. We lost all of the bees. And in late February, early March, when I finally accepted that there was no bees coming, we had an early swarm move in to a stack of boxes. That particular queen was dark, and they were beautiful, and they were calm, and they were prolific, and they made gobs and gobs of propolis. And all of a sudden I said, where are these bees coming from? And I could, long story short, these bees swarmed from that hillside, from that setting sun area. And we, at that time, had built our entire Nature's Image Farm stock off of that genetic line. That was our original queen line, came from that. Fast forward a few years, and she gets this flyer in the mail for this land, and we know we've outgrown where we're at. There's opportunities for us to grow. But economy of scale, we can only do so much here. God made a way. God made a way for us to get on a much larger acreage here, to grow the operation, where we started selling supplies and doing all these things. Right here in these woods on this 102 acres is where those bees were coming from at the homestead, right here on this very piece of ground. And it is so beautiful. That's where our queen line got its start. Our existence here at Nature's Image is a series of God moving in ways that we can't understand, that we know is outside of us and our doing. It's just us being obedient and taking these steps of faith, saying, okay, Lord, if this is where you want us to go, we'll start walking, and we'll know that you've got a way, that you will figure this out. Here we are now, years after all of that, and we've turned what we were passionate about, what was the opportunity on the homestead, we've turned it into a growing and budding business of selling queens and nukes and supplies and all these things. But more importantly, as a family, doing this together and giving God the glory and the praise for it all.
And isn't it funny how during these times of struggle, especially husband and wife, then even more so, you got children, and even more, y'all got 7 children. You know, most folks nowadays, 1 or 2, and that's pretty well it. I mean, y'all got a passel of youngins running around the place. But during those times, in those alone moments, if you will, and I know as well as going on in a woman's head, but I'll speak on a man's point of view for a second. But Lord, things are getting a little tight. What do you want me to do? You know, will you open up a door or whatever the case may be? Yeah, or crack a window kind of thing. Just something to where we can get on by. Then we see these little bitty bits and pieces coming together. Then, as you're saying now, you fast forward, but then yet rewind as you look back and go, I see what you was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though we still have them same struggles daily, we look back at those times and think, well, we sure had it rough, and times that you honestly did. You know, like we talk about folks that we work for ourselves, and you know, if we don't get out there and hustle in some kind of way, ain't nobody sending the work in.
Yeah,
it just don't come falling at your doorstep. So if you don't get out there and make something happen, then you're gonna starve. The lights are gonna be shut off, then so on and so forth. But listening to the Lord, and thankfully Him hearing prayers of, you know, I don't want to say I'm scared, Lord, but like I say, it's getting a little tight around here, if you will. So
yeah,
we can make something happen, then He does. You know, just simple
I would
as
say that He has never, there has never been a time the Lord left us hanging on something we needed. We might not have gotten everything we wanted or we thought we wanted, but the Lord has never not provided for us. Like you said, as long as you keep that open line of communication with Him and you look for direction from Him, He won't just leave you hanging there.
but just for one example, had a lifelong childhood friend. He come in and seen him comment a minute ago, but John, I mean, this is just a couple of weeks ago. Thinking on some of that, it especially if you're in the construction business, usually around this time of the year, everything kind of starts idling on down until after the first of the year. But the last, I know, 5 years, the Lord has kept us going, even all the way to Christmas, and us going back to work a day or two after Christmas. But we just got one of them little lulls a few weeks back, and Buddy John called and he said, hey, if you got anything, I could use a little bit extra money. Give me a shout. And I said, all right, here's something. I'll let you know. Just meandering out the yard talking to the Lord. Me and him was having fellowship about this the other day at his house. But I said, John, I said, after me and you got off the telephone, I said, Bo, I said, it wasn't the next morning. The phone was ringing.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days later, we're sitting on the job. And you're there with us kind of thing. You know, that's the Lord putting all that together because he knew our needs in that moment. And
All of our needs.
it's, yes, very humbling that the Lord listened to our prayers, and even on the smallest of little things of detail of what we need, we know that He's going to fulfill. We just have to take that breath and allow Him to do His work.
It's easier said than done, I think, a lot of times. But if we go back, when the Bible says that God knew us before the foundations of the earth were laid, if we remember that, we remind ourselves of that, we're not living in a world of happenstance. We're not living in a world of coincidence. There is a plan that is set out, that is before us, whether we see it or know it or not. We don't even necessarily have the privilege or the right to even know what that is, but it is up to us to take those uncomfortable steps of obedience sometimes to do this thing, or to go in that direction, or to pick up the phone and call that person, or to answer this text, or to be there for that. All these things that sometimes may feel way outside of our abilities to do, or uncomfortable, or we don't want to. Those are the times, especially when you hear that other side and you hear that other voice saying, "What are you doing? You got nothing to say. You shouldn't be talking about that. You know, you start bringing the Lord into this, you're going to lose business. You start listening to that. That's when you know 100% for sure that call that came before, that tugging on your heart to do that thing. When you're getting opposed so heavily in those moments, for me, that's when I 100% know. Okay, whoa, back up. That first call to go do this, we have got to do that, because when you have that opposing conversation, that opposing call, I feel like that's at work as a hindrance to still kill and destroy the things that are set out in front of you to be a part of that plan. Anyone who's raised a family, I mean, look, guys, I'm not going to sit here and I don't want anyone to think that we've got life figured out. I don't know the future, but I know who holds the future. And that's all that I need to cling on to. Because if there's ever been any time in our life where I think that my answer to a problem is going to be what's going to dig us out or get us to the next step, that's quickly where pride goes before a fall. But Suze, how many times have we, in every aspect of life, whether it's paying the bills, making ends meet, clothes for the kids, making a mortgage, making a tractor payment, how many times have we scraped together and scratched and pulled out rolled coins and dug in and like, here we are, right? It's been years and years of that. The Lord's always provided and it seems to be, even in those times where we feel like there is nothing left in the bottom to scrape from, you're in the bottom of the barrel and you're pulling up wood splinters. You're thinking, how are we going to feed everybody on that? There's a knock at the door and there's somebody with loaves of bread and a bucket of chicken, or you name it. Like it's a beautiful thing when we learn to trust God and not lean on ourselves and our own abilities. And I think if it's okay, I got something here I want to read to you guys, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
If anyone here is offended by the old King James, and I'll go ahead and give you a head start on seeing yourself out here, because this is something important that was laid on my heart in the last couple of weeks, and I'll be honest, none of this is easy. Raising a large family, having a bee supply business is probably the worst idea ever, financially speaking, because it is the hardest, most competitive, lowest profit margin of anything that we have ever done, hands down, period. But it is the most rewarding, because if God can use bugs in a box to be a lighthouse, He can surely use us too. And there's been so many relationships and people that come in and out of here where people nickname us and call us evangelists, because there are so many opportunities to just meet people where they're at, just to be there for somebody, have that conversation, see them through a hard time. A lot of times they're coming in here with problems that has nothing to do with bees, but bees, they want to come here and ask a question. They just feel like that's really important. As we are all growing business, we're trying to make our ends meet. And man, I mean, I'll be careful how I say this too, because how many folks right now have had their entire worlds literally washed down the mountainside. Everything that they thought that they knew was their existence on earth is gone. Family, friends, buildings, houses, cars, land, trees. Like that is it is more than heartbreaking. And for me to share this next piece here, I in no way want to sound like I've got their answer, because I don't. I mean, I do, because God is, I feel like, is their answer. But that doesn't make it any easier when you're digging out mud and you're looking for family and everything is gone. But as my heart is broke for them and all of that, in our own world, in our own storms of life, we're currently in a massive David and Goliath moment with our business, with our family, and we feel like we're getting ready to step up with the slingshot, and we're trusting that God has the direction and has the answer. And as we're working through all this, and I'm worried about, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? How do we grow? How are we going to be competitive? How are we going to keep the lights on? How are we going to keep making all these things happen? Have you ever done that thing where it's time that you got to get into the Word, and you just do this thing where you just take it and you open it up and you start reading, and all of a sudden wherever you flip to was exactly that thing that you needed to read, that you needed. Like, it is hard to put that to words. I think there are a lot of areas in the book that will speak to whatever we need, but when you flip open a page and it lands on the thing that you need right there, and it breaks you down, and all of a sudden you have a complete understanding of something that you were just broken down and shaken because of. This is what happened to me over the last couple of weeks, and I want to share this because it not just pertains to us. I think it pertains to everybody, anybody going through loss or rebuild or trying to figure out what these next steps are. This is Matthew chapter 6, starting at verse 19. But it says, "Lay not up yourselves treasure upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thy eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will hold on to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, what ye shall drink, nor yet what your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment?" And this right here is what spoke to me, because as I'm sitting outside and I'm reading this, I'm surrounded by these little blackbirds who are just looking around for a crumb. They're looking for something to eat with no thought in the world. I'm looking at them. I'm trying to read. I'm trying to focus. These birds keep flying. They're landing. They're all around me. And I'm thinking, what are you knuckleheads doing? And I get to this. "Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, how they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which day is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need for all these things." And probably one of my absolute favorite verses comes next. I know you guys know it. "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things," not some of them, not a couple of them, all these things shall be added unto you.
Amen.
Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And I
Yes, and
wanted to
amen.
share that because how many times are we in there? We're digging, we're in the trenches. We're trying to figure all these things out. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? How am I going to make these ends meet? How am I going to, guys, what I can say after being married for
24 years.
Thank you. 24 years, 7 kids, these different moves on land and buildings and opportunities. God has always made the way. There's nothing that we did that was so special in these things that we did other than be obedient and take one step after the other in that direction, knowing that our eye is on that single light. That's what we're filling our body with. That is the direction that Jesus is that light, and it is up to us to be that lighthouse, to shine that light, to be there for others, to let that light shine, not hide it under a bushel, to take those steps out in faith. And now here we are all these years later looking back on all of it, and you think, holy cow, what an incredible journey.
It's funny you was reading that, especially the part of the fowl in the air, or the fowl in the air, but sitting up her grandma's today and that old home place, and just kind of give you a visual, if you will. The pre-war between the states, and just a long old front porch on that thing, and there's rocking chairs sitting on that cool front porch facing toward the east. And y'all, we've had some beautiful weather down here the last week or so. It's just the days we live for down here, especially on this coast. But I was sitting on the porch, and Hannah and I sitting out there today, and just me being me, I was arguing back and forth with a mockingbird. And this old mockingbird, you can ask Hannah, that thing taunted me several different times coming in and out of this old privet bush. But sitting there thinking to myself and the things that we have going on in our life, I looked at that old mockingbird and I just had a serious moment with myself. I said, you don't even worry about where you get your food from.
Oh, man.
The Lord has you lined out that good that where you can just tinker around this bush and aggravate me.
Sing your little heart out.
Yeah, and that little joker, like she's saying, he sung and carried on. But just watching that bird go back and forth, give me that moment, like you saying, to where those moments of scripture hit you of calm down. He's got us on course.
Yeah.
Even though don't let the devil rattle your cage or none of that going on. Just take that deep breath and let him continue to guide y'all along on with what y'all got going on here. But when you're reading that, then you follow up Matthew chapter 7 is one of my favorite chapters of the Bible. And when you was talking about chapter 6, I was thinking, we'll go on to chapter 7, but I didn't want you to push through on that much reading everything, but just in my head and thinking of, you woke up?
Yeah.
Some
Get lost.
Jasper flinging around. He took the camera out last weekend. He's gonna take you out this weekend. Most definitely appreciate you sharing the word. And Anna has to kind of get on to me a little bit because she says it's my tone, but I'm with you on. It's up to you whether you want to sit on here and listen to us talk scripture. I encourage you to, but if you don't, then so be it. There's the door. But I'll get up on that before I get on too big of a kick. But
Big disaster. So I told you I was worried about that.
Yeah. Laura, oh, well, he ain't no puppy no more, and he's used to jumping up in his chair with her, and now it's like a diving board, if you will, whenever he comes off the chair there, fling her across the room. But,
Yeah.
well, we have about 30 more minutes left. Y'all mind if there's anybody that's got questions or want to chit chat with y'all, kind of rummage through that a little bit?
You bet.
But, kind of going back, and I noticed she's holding the phone over there, so I have to squint what everybody says. But
You can have it. I'm sorry.
I like how the pup's back there. He's got his seat there. He's got his ears pinned back, like everything's fine. Just look at him and lean into it.
I am. He'll do his best to shove me out of this chair.
let's see. This is what Hallelujah forms got here.
Oh.
Greg, the story of that ridge line y'all watched the sunset over and made to think of, and added the story of the bruised thumbnail and a horrible crash. A thumbnail is a small image of a much larger picture.
That's good. Pastor Larry and Jan, I got a special shout out to them. I love what they do on Sunday mornings. It looks like they go live before they go in person. And I really appreciate that. Whenever I'm, have a cup of coffee and I'm just a few minutes there, I like to tune in and see what Pastor Larry's talking about there. Small scale life. Tom Dahmers. Wow, what a great guy. We've got a long history. Tom's been a part of the podcast, friend, collaborator for nearly the entire ride here.
Yeah.
It seems like as we've grown and gotten and done all the things, he's been around from the very beginning. He's got a great podcast called Small Scale Life. And you talk about someone who has endured some storms. It's not my story to tell, but him and his wife have been through a lot. I love him to pieces. He's got a question here. It looks
why
like,
did you start saying this?
be the
What does it
lighthouse.
mean
I
to you
love this
today?
mantra and philosophy. When and why did you start saying this? And what does it mean to you today? Susan, make sure you give some input. Love you guys. Many blessings. Well, it is no coincidence that we are in Matthew chapter 6, because if we just go right over one page over, literally, to Matthew 5, Tim and Hannah, you're going to have to forgive me because I'm going to beat him with the King James here for just a minute again. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, starting there. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. For us, when we say, be the lighthouse, how many of us have been that ship out on stormy seas, tossed to and fro, taken on water, feeling like you're getting ready to drown, that there is no hope? And out to the horizon is a lighthouse. And that lighthouse fills you with hope and lets you know where the danger is, where the rocks are, where the shoreline is, sometimes where the safe harbor is. If we are all honest and look back in our life and the turmoil and the storms that we've weathered, there has always been someone who has been a lighthouse to us. For me, I've got several, and I could go on and on and on and on about that. But for us, just what the scripture says, ye are the light of the world. We are just the vessel. We're the bricks and the mortar. But when we let God's light shine through us, we are that lighthouse on a hill that is there for others, to sometimes warn, to sometimes be there for that safe harbor. For us, when we say be the lighthouse, that's exactly what it means. Is be the lighthouse to somebody. Be that light and that hope and that encouragement to somebody in that storm, in that time of life. And when Christ is your light and you are the lighthouse, I think that is the most greatest and most impact you can ever make on this earth, is showing folks to the light showing folks to Christ.
Reminds me of that old gospel song Brother David sings all the time at the Bible
Yep.
conference every year.
If it wasn't for the Lighthouse, where would
Where
this
would
ship
this ship
be?
be?
Have y'all
So-
heard that?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up on old Southern gospel. My favorite version of that is probably the Happy Goodmans, old Vestal Goodman in there as well. But
Yeah.
if it weren't for the Lighthouse, where would this ship be? Especially I would encourage folks after this chat, YouTube that Happy Goodman's Lighthouse and listen to those words. And it has never been more appropriate than right now. But it talks about a lighthouse that was set on a hill, and everyone said, tear that old lighthouse down. Just tear it down. No one needs it. No one's looking for that lighthouse. No one's looking for Christ anymore. Just tear the lighthouse down. But if it wasn't for the lighthouse, where would this ship be?
Well, I'll be bouncing around all over the place out there, done run aground.
Yeah.
Lee, thank you much, brother, for doing the
I was
gifts out
trying
there.
to get that in the chat.
Uh,
We appreciate you, Lee.
yes, sir. So DC's got one for y'all here. So Greg, how did you get interested in propolis and benefits of its production in the boxes?
Great. A lot of it was my wife's fault, to be truthful. With the honey and when she was wanting us to get into bees because of the health, there's the idea that propolis can be beneficial to human health. I mean, that wisdom has been out there. But when we first used to log the pine, throw them on the sawmill, and have old rough cut boxes that we would dado joint up, right? And what we would notice is that even on those cuts, the bees would do a little, every time you run a sawmill, it doesn't matter how good, well, maybe unless you're really, really, really good and have really fine equipment, maybe it doesn't do this so much. But I've never seen anything that come off a band mill that didn't have some band marks on it. And where that tooth hits and skips or goes past, one of them always seems to be out. And through that repetition, it creates a little high and low spot on those boards. And what we had seen, even as we were first getting started and going through and building all of our own boxes and just bootlasting the whole thing, we noticed that the bees would always propolize that up. And so it was always in my mind that for whatever reason on the rough cut boxes, the bees would propolize those, where the smooth, plain, clean boxes, they wouldn't touch. And I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. And that was just been a part of the journey for all this time. But Premier Bee Company reached out to us and invited us to be on an advisory board with folks like Marla Spivak, Dr. Mike Vinstromi, and a lot of other leading minds in the industry when it comes to propolis and the benefits, a lot of testing and research. Marla Spivak has spent her entire career studying genetics and propolis and how that impacts colonies. What Premier Bee Company wanted to do is they wanted to create a box that encouraged bees to layer the inside with propolis for all those health benefits that all these studies are showing. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, would you be interested in being a part of this board? And a few years back, they sent us a bunch of different types of textures, all these different things, and we trialed those here. I gave them some feedback and said, here's what we're seeing. The bees are doing awesome on these particular things. They took that back. They started making boxes with that particular texture on the inside. And all of these studies are now coming out that line up with that are showing that colonies that produce more propolis are overall healthier for all these different reasons. What's beautiful to think about this, though, is we still don't understand exactly what the mechanism is. We just understand that colonies with a heavy propolis envelope inside, they are the healthiest, most prolific, most productive, but now they're actually getting down to some of the nitty gritty because propolis is a known antiviral, even an antimicrobial in a lot of scenarios. If it's so important for these bees to bring back all these resins to coat the inside of these colonies, why are they doing that? We've seen bee logs that we've captured and harvested, and we've set them up and studied, where even once those bees, if they eventually die or they eventually abscond, bees will come back and actually rob the propolis out of the inside of the log and take it off. So there is something very special and powerful about propolis in nature that bees feel it's important to make sure that they have it inside of their colony in the environments where they can actually place it. So we fast forward a little bit. There is a lot of incredible studies that are going to be coming out here in the very near future that are going to go in detail and length by specifically, I think, what these mechanisms are, but they're finding some really incredible things. Like a propolis envelope is creating fertility issues inside of a colony, not with the bees, but with the mites. And that's a big deal. There's all of these things that are already in place by design for these bees to do for their health that have been there, I think, from the very beginning. But in the 80s and 90s, commercial beekeepers wanted to get away from those sticky, gummy bees and start to use the bees that did less propolis, had less of that going on. We've had now decades and decades of issues with bees, with health, with viruses. Now everyone's going back to the Caucasians and the Carniolans, going to scenarios where there are colonies that are producing propolis. And I can 100% without a shadow of a doubt say our colonies that produce the most propolis are hands down the healthiest every single year. So that's kind of where the propola box came from, was to create an environment that mimicked the natural tree, the texture on the inside, so the bees can start creating a propolis envelope inside of the colony as one other layer of defense and one other health benefit without needing all these extra things. So that's kind of where that came from.
Well, there's got to be something to it as much as they drag off in them things, especially around here, buddy. You talk about just haul the propolis in. Them girls do it.
Yep.
Let's see, one of these Texans here. Greg and Susan, what animals do y'all have now?
That's a soft spot. Susie, what do we have running around here now?
Mostly just laying hens and turkeys and ducks at the moment. Dogs and kids.
And a lot of cats. Some of them are getting pretty husky. And hey, if times get tough, I'm just saying.
Oh, no.
Little Szechuan kitten be perfect.
Oh,
no?
I don't know. The kids
I couldn't
would
do
give
that
up
to the
princess.
kids. No.
There was a baby kitten that just ended up having to live inside for a while, so I don't think they'd give her up. But
we the last animals that I mean, it's all livestock. All of it is for our own use. Not what we have left here as far as critters go, or not for necessarily financial gain. They might sell a few eggs here and there, but the last round of critters that left, I actually cried as I left out with them, and that was Susie's jerseys.
Yeah, the milk
They
cows.
were. It was really important to us here. This current farm, in 1899, a German couple planted their flag here. They built a chicken coop to live in, and then they spent the next year building a bank barn. Once the bank barn was built, they started a dairy. And historically, this area had dairy cows on it. And so for me, what felt right and was an homage not just to them and a hat tip, it just felt like I had to. We brought the cows over from the other farm to here for a year to graze and to be a part of the barn and be a part of that system. And what we found, the way that we wanted to raise these milk cows is rotational grazing. We're moving them every day or 2 days, always on fresh ground, moving polywire around, moving their water around. And for 4 head of cows, that is an enormous undertaking, because if it's 4, it might as well be 24, which is way more profitable. But it was taking so much time, and it was actually interfering with the bees, and the bees were going without, because the time that we did have was going to the cows and moving this. And it was just, cows are a lot of work, extremely rewarding. And I loved them. I love the smell of them. I love their coat. Even when they're in the stanchion and we were milking them, this is going to sound gross. But even when those happy, healthy cows would burp or belch when they're in the stanchion, there's just a certain, I know it sounds crazy, but when everyone's happy and healthy, it's just, I love it. And I love the smell of a cow. I love everything about it. I loved them to death. But it was going to be the death of our bees, because we can't spread ourselves too thin. So we had to make the call, sold the cows off. Someday, maybe we'll bring them back. Maybe we'll bring some beef back, but that means a lot of fence. And
maybe a lot more grandkids helping
bees
out.
Are great, because bees don't need polywire. They don't need fence posts being pounded. We just have to build boxes and feed them and move them and do all those things. So,
DC's got a secondary on the The propolis, do y'all collect it?
We do, but I don't collect it to sell necessarily.
I make tincture with it for us personally.
Yeah. There's a lot of benefits. Guys, if we're being honest, we're all getting old or maybe old. There's a great chance that a lot of us may be dealing or could be potentially dealing with things like prostate related issues. And I've learned from a respected beekeeper who struggled with constant prostate infections that no amount of antibiotics, one after the other, and the rough stuff was getting rid of it. And he started chewing on propolis every day. In about a 2 or 3 week time period, started turning the corner in a big way with the prostate infection and is completely healed of that. Went and talked to his doctor about it. There's an antiviral component with propolis. So for me, when I'm out there working bees, our bees make tons of it. I'll chew on it. I'll even come home sometimes with a piece stuck to your teeth and it looks like, what are you doing? I think propolis can cure a lot of things. It won't make your hair grow back, and it won't make you any prettier. That's a fact. I can tell you that. But it's good for a lot of other things.
Let me get through here. So there's any more in here.
Did you see this? He had asked about the civil law.
Somebody was poking the bear with that question.
Uh-oh. That
That one there.
I didn't realize.
Lee Kodiak.
Yeah. That's funny.
Susie, tell us about Susie's top bar hive.
I don't know. I think I might just run it over with the lawnmower at some point. We're getting to drive it. Roop.
You gotta sometimes be careful how
Speed bump.
hard you hate on something, because God has a way of just making it live just
I
to
know.
spite you.
They swarm out and another swarm comes back in.
No.
Oh, that hive.
There's a beautiful
it just
video.
like never wants to die.
That's a real long. Lee asked because he knows the story, but the story of that thing is they just won't quit.
Yeah.
And it's a top bar scenario. So what am I going to do? Shoot him with OA? I mean, there's nothing I can do for them.
Yeah.
Or there is a learning opportunity, but they keep persisting. And they died out last winter, and a swarm moved right in. And there's a video on our channel real early on, and the thumbnail is like Lily, our daughter, with all these bees. It was the most if you doubt the existence of God, you cannot help but feel the intensity and the energy and the power and the beauty when you're standing right smack dab in the middle of a swarm, and you can smell it, you can feel it, you can hear it. And there is something way greater, way more intentional than you can ever imagine. That video, I think, captured that beautifully. The amount of it was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, Mary Ann Sears. Oh, I love her and Larry.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They have treated MRSA infections with propolis
awesome.
with good results. Wow.
I wouldn't have guessed
incredible. That. Texas beekeeper, love that feeling. There is something special about that for sure.
And she wasn't scared. She was just standing there.
Oh. Yeah,
you were like underneath,
faith, literally faith like a child. They see an example. They see dad out there just enthralled in it, and she goes, "Well, I can do that too." And she runs and she
but us
opens
girls
up her
got long
arms,
hair,
and she's right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And she just looks up, and it's just what a cool thing.
I was trying to describe that to somebody.
Yeah. Lee, I think what we're going to do is we're going to wax dip that rascal, and we're going to make sure that top bar hive lives forever.
Ay.
So we're doing this out of love.
Yeah.
Trying to keep that baby around as long as we can, since you enjoy it so much.
It's leaning like the Eiffel Tower, so I don't know.
It's got
a good lean going.
Oh, it's in the absolute worst.
Yes,
worst.
So bad.
It's on the this old bank barn has an old milk house where there was a spring well cold box in there where they would cool the milk cans off, and so it's just naturally cold right there too. Well, this top bar hive, when you pull into our place, you see it. It's more of a lawn ornament really than anything, but it's on the west side of this cold milk house, so it stays cold most of the day, and then our heavy intense wind comes directly from the west. And so it's getting blasted with all the cold, all the heavy wind, It's never in the sun. It's not in an ideal spot whatsoever. Yet these rascals, they just keep doing their thing every single year, one way or the other. But for those who didn't know that story, it was a lawn ornament. We brought it here to set it up. When she wasn't looking, someone didn't pick up a package, and they say, just do whatever you want to with it. I took it out. Brian's got it on video. We took this package out. We shook a package into that top bar real quick, closed it up. I scribbled on it, Susie's Top Bar Hive. It was a lot of fun. And it's a great educational piece as far as top bar beekeeping. And that's a horse of a different color.
Yeah.
I was just, well, before I get to Philip's question, I was just thinking in my mind, if it aggravates her that much, what I'm going to do is take a picture of that bad boy. And when it finally does just go away, I'm going to hold on to that memory myself for a few moments. Then go get a big portrait printed out. That way we can live with it for a lifetime.
Make life-size portrait of Susie's Top Bar Hive for her Christmas gift.
Yeah, right.
Got it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It'll make a great anniversary present. I know that.
I think so. 25-year anniversary present? Doesn't get any better than that, does it?
No, sir.
Yeah. I want a video of that one.
I guess we better mosey on before we get in trouble. But
You gotta get everybody in trouble, but
Philip, I'm not familiar with the term bank barn.
Bank barn. Oh yeah, I guess yeah. That's probably a local.
Maybe no hillsides.
If
where
you're
he's from.
if you're a flatlander or you're in flatland country, you probably wouldn't know what this is. Respectfully, of course. Out here, we're in the hills, and so you've got to make the most out of your topography. So a bank barn is, if you imagine a hillside.
You gotta put your arm the other way.
Yeah, I can't. Everything's backwards. It's a two-story. It's at least a two-story barn that's built into a hillside.
Yeah.
So you can take advantage of the lower side being on the
Imagine the basement.
the foot of a hill, and as the hill goes up, you enter the top part of the barn through the top part of the hill. So it creates a two-story.
Well, he had a nice
two-story barn scenario.
It's
a barn
explanation.
built into the bank of a hill.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go.
There, that's easier.
Hey, Tom Sosman there via Honeybees. I like what he says there. Buy her a dishwasher for the anniversary gift. We have black or silver. You pick.
How many dishwashers have we had in our marriage?
Well, we have how many kids? We got
Right.
a lot of dishwashers.
Like,
It's your blessings, Miss Susan.
Let's not interrupt them, because that was about them and their dishwasher.
Oh, I'm sure.
It has
it
nothing
was.
to do with us and dishwashers around here.
I don't think that one was for them.
This is about Mr.
Hey,
and Mrs.
Tim, how long
Burns.
you been married?
9 years Thursday. Yes.
Are you is what you're trying to say is your dishwasher's 9 years old? Is that what you're trying to say without saying it?
Well, we go back to last weekend. We was talking about manual dishwashers and electric ones. So we can say that.
I don't know that there's you have to check yours in private, but I don't think there's Zert fittings on the elbows for grease on those female dishwashers, but somehow they keep working. I don't.
Yeah,
The more it goes, the louder it gets. I'm talking about you can't push that thing up till it's done with its cycle.
I have no idea what you're talking about there.
Y'all are just so funny tonight.
Well,
You're just so funny.
this made me think. Let's see, we're getting on the top of our hours
The
here.
chats with me,
I'm sorry.
that comment was definitely for you.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lee's calling you out. He's getting good at that mud bugging, ain't he, Lee?
Look, we haven't talked about food yet, so we need to get into that portion of the gun line. Yeah, everybody that rides it out with us knows at the very end it goes food, guns, and getting in trouble with the parents. So, what's one of your favorite meals that she gets in there and rattles them dishes for you for?
Oh, hands down, without even second guessing, biscuits and gravy. That's all I need. Black coffee, biscuits and gravy. Especially when we had our own pork. I mean, you just and I'm talking, I don't mean just, I mean, nothing against the flour gravy, guys. I don't mean anything by it, but I like a good, you know, what do you call it when you make a roux where it's the sausage and you're making the whole
the
thing
brown
up and it's a
gravy
little
with
bit of a
sausage.
darker, real rich pork gravy over homemade biscuits.
Mhm.
Boy, I could eat. Boy, that sounds good right
Yeah,
now.
it's been a while.
Could eat it later
Big
tonight.
old cast iron skillet with that in it, and
Sound like biscuits and gravy, man.
Mm.
That is some good eating now.
What about you, Tim? What's your favorite dinner? I'm assuming you don't do the cooking. Not to say you can't, but what's the
Say he
favorite meal that Hannah
was.
makes for you?
Yes, she does. I enjoyed a good old homemade meatloaf.
Mm.
And you're starting to tinker around real close. There's one of the ladies at church that makes a just out of this world squash casserole. And now Hannah can cook the fried squash. Them jokers barely make it to the plate whenever she's bringing them dudes off. So I have to go with the meatloaf, my fried squash, and you're getting good at that squash casserole that Miss Vera makes. So it's pretty much whatever she does fried for the most part.
You've been married 9 years.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying you said this, but it sort of sounded like she comes in second with this squash thing with the lady at church there. That's almost as bad as saying what she makes is almost as good as your mom's meatloaf. That's not, I mean, I'm just going to tell you,
Well,
probably not safe.
This lady, like I call her Nanny. Like I've known her my whole life, but it's funny you say that because not long ago, a couple months ago, we were helping them do some stuff around their house, and Nanny Vera, buddy, she's gonna feed you. It
Yes.
does not matter what you come for or how long you plan on staying. She's gonna feed you. Well, she made her meatloaf and mashed potatoes and squash casserole and something else. And I mean, let everything come straight out of the garden in their backyard. And she whipped it up in that kitchen. But she was joking with me because he had ate so much he couldn't buckle his tool belt to get back on that roof. And he was just going on about it, walking out. Well, I stayed to help her, clean up the kitchen and stuff before I got back on the roof with him. And she hugged my neck real hard and she goes, "Baby, I'm glad you don't get mad that he likes my cooking better than yours." I was like, "It's all good, Nancy Fear, because I like your cooking better too."
Oh,
and don't
She's
you
a
know?
mess.
Now Hannah can cook, but I like it that she's picking up the elder woman's recipes
oh, 100%.
yep.
and she's trying them here at home. And I'm more than happy to be your taste tester on that until you get it just right.
Hey, that's what we have to do. It's our
Until
duty.
I get it right.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what, I will. I'm not going to bull crapper. I'll tell you what, it needs a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Said where she live.
But when she gets it, I tell her, don't touch it. After that, leave it alone right there because that's where it
Be
needs
careful
to
what
be.
you ask for because you may get to a point in your marriage. And I pray that Hannah gets set on fire with really trying to perfect lard pie crusts. I'm just going to tell you, Tim, it's going to be a rough spot in your life where you're going to have to just dig deep and just be, you know what, I've got to eat all these pies every single time. It's such a hard job, but you got to do it for the greater good, Tim. You got to do it for the family recipe, the legacy, Hannah's pie legacy. Just know, just get ready.
He's just telling you stories about his.
Yeah.
No, it's not quite right. Keep going.
Oh, I think I need another slice of that. I don't. Let me test that one again.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two more pies like that, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's like them pumpkin pies right there now.
Oh.
Well,
Said if you need some help with that, let me know.
because I tell like this time of the year. Now, all right, get back to the elder women's recipes. I will admit she has become above my mama in some of the areas of cooking.
Oh, I don't know. But
And especially whenever she figured out how to make Mama's pumpkin pies. This time
Ooh.
of year, buddy,
Oh,
you could cook me a pumpkin pie every day, and I'll run through them all season long, kind of
100%.
thing.
he
Yeah.
don't even get a plate and a fork. Literally, he's gonna grab the whole pie out of the fridge and a napkin, and he's gonna eat that pie like slices of pizza.
I mean, that's
He
love,
don't
though,
even
isn't it?
slow down
I mean,
to
think
use
about
a fork.
he's thinking of you, really. I mean, if I did the same thing, I'd be
That would
thinking
not work in our
I'd be
house. Our
thinking
kids would murder you.
I'd be thinking of the dishwasher. We're gonna save you, Tam. We're gonna save utensils. We're gonna save the dishwashing. No plates, no forks.
There's not even
We
usually
just need
enough
the
pie
pie.
pieces for all of us because I have to make 2 or 3 to get it to go around
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, and I gotta hide them. I gotta
Yeah.
hide the pies. Got no chance.
There we go. That's why I tell her, look, if you're going, which anytime, especially if we have a church gathering or something, me and the other folks already go ahead and put in their request for buttermilk pies.
Oh, yeah.
So she's always going to do the buttermilk pies for the church folks and all that. But whenever, like, we getting into Thanksgiving and Christmas and everybody really starts going after the pumpkin pies, I do put in a request of, if you're going to make 2, go on and make a 3rd one. That way you can take 2 to church. I got this one here.
But it's like all of my recipes make 2 pies.
Yep.
Because I grew up in a big family too. Like my mom, I'm one of 6 kids.
Wow.
So there's no sense in making 1 pie. Like it's not
There'll
gonna
be
last.
blood if you want to make one
So
pie.
every single recipe for pies she had makes 2 pies. So I'm like, I can't make 3 pies. So he usually ends up getting 2 for home.
Oh, they won't last.
You
No.
don't complain.
It's pie season. Probably one of the a really pie. No one. Are you in your neck of the woods? Sounds like you. Do you have much of a German population down in your area, or a German influence on the? No, maybe not.
No, not too much. It's more.
Folks make their own sauerkraut in your areas.
No, sir.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, then this is going to fall on deaf ears. But if you're in an area, we make our
No,
own
sir.
sauerkraut every year. We try to. I'm actually behind on that. But one of the oddest, most delicious pie is actually a sauerkraut pie. Believe it or not, sauerkraut pies, sour cream apple pies. It's a whole other world there. But when the crust is made from lard, good lard, you can't go wrong.
That's what you need to do. So I'm assuming that Ms. Burns here has the lard recipe at hand.
Down pat, huh? She can probably make that pie crust in her sleep.
Well, y'all need to rendezvous with the telephone.
She might have to make us a couple first before we can test it. Make sure it's vetted before we turn that loose to the public. I mean, we wouldn't want to. No, she does. I'm 6'2", 275. I have not gone without a meal. She keeps me very well fed. Pie season is my favorite season. And typically, if I make it this long with behaving on keto, I'm usually falling off the wagon at pumpkin pie, sugar pie, all those. And when we get into this season here, and it's like, no, we'll try again in February.
Yeah, you can't diet during the holidays.
Mm-mm.
Well, not especially when you got good home cooked stuff coming in, something that didn't come out the doggone freezer at the store over there. And somebody said, I slaved all day over this pie. You're going,
You thought it out.
yeah, I don't want
Marie
to
calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, really appreciate you inviting us to get on here and talk a little bit about bees and our walk with the Lord. I really appreciate what you guys do and all the folks who tune in to your channel. And I just wanted to take a quick second before we cut loose here, just to encourage folks to, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in. We're in a time period right now where you're going to have a choice, and you may not be able to go back. Make that choice to step forward, to do what's right, to walk in that faith, to be a lighthouse to others, this world is becoming darker and darker and darker. But just remember, a little bit of light in that darkness goes an awful long way. And I think there's a lot of folks who have just been on the fence too long. There's been too many folks who've just been a little too lukewarm or cold. You know, a lot of folks, they need that encouragement. And so it's really important. Tim and Hannah, you guys keep doing what you do. A lot of folks in this beekeeping community keep doing what they're doing to be a lighthouse to so many folks. And I think there's never been a time more important than right now.
Absolutely. And that light has shined through many of y'all here in the beekeeping community. And it especially has shown in these last few weeks, being there for brothers and sisters and lifting each other up in prayer on that end. And
Coming together like we're supposed to.
That's it. Loving one another. But, well, thank y'all once again very, very much for taking the time and chit-chatting or chewing the fat, however you want to say it.
No offense, Greg, but a special, special thank you to you, Miss Susan, for coming on. Like you don't know how thrilled I was when he was like, "Yeah, she's coming too." I was like, but no, we really, really enjoyed hearing y'all's story. Like y'all have an awesome testimony.
Absolutely.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for having us.
Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Doors open anytime. Mr. But y'all take care. Yeah, we after our 2-hour mark here. But
that flew by.
It did. We got pies in. Got a little beekeeping in.
Talked about dishwashers. I mean, full night.
We got that in. But
I'm glad we rounded it out with that one.
Let's not get off dishwasher. Trying to make a good point here before we close this thing up. Fellowship. And being that lighthouse, as you say, there all the time as well. So we appreciate y'all watching. God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see y'all on the next one.
Yeah. Y'all have a good week.